I'm your Jesus loving and potty host, LA Sprague. Welcome to Christians with Chronic Illnesses.
Okay, Lucy, I'm thrilled to have you. Like I said, I'm literally so excited. I've been really thrilled to have you as a part of this particular podcast because you share a lot of like similar things with me, like passions for Jesus and his heart for the nations, and then also like having chronic illnesses and then balancing like what it looks like to live with that. So, anyway, thanks so much for being on. I'm really thrilled for what this conversation might have.
You are so welcome. I'm just thrilled that you reached out to me with this project. I'm really excited for what God's going to do with this project.
Oh,
Um
thank you. Dude, me too.
yeah, I was praying for this episode before we started recording. I was just praying. I know God's going to use this in really cool ways.
Hmm. Yeah, I pray so. Okay, well, why don't you talk about, like who you are, Lucy, as a person, and maybe about your relationship with Jesus?
Yeah, so as a friend of mine often says, my Clark Kent air quotes job would be arts.
I
I'm a
love that.
visual artist. That's what I went for school for. Um, but strangely is not actually what I would say I do. What I do, even though like I don't really, so I mean I don't make money with art either. I don't really make money with this either, but I am a missions mobilizer and it is worth like all of the time. And I know I feel like the like Gen Z is always like very concerned with like yeah, like how do you support yourself? How do you make money? But I just have found so much fulfillment in just being a part of God's global purposes through mobilization, even in spite of, the hard things that come with it and the fact that, people don't really want to pay you to do that oftentimes.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but that is also like my husband and I, our main income also does still come from mobilization. Even though yeah, it has its own unique challenges, but we love it. We love it so much. So
Oh,
yeah, that's I guess the basics. An artist, I'm a mobilizer.
so cool. What the heck? Like, who gets to say that they're an artist and a missions mobilizer? It's so unique. I love that.
I do love being able to say that.
Yeah.
There's something that's
Oh,
just like it's really fun when people ask. I'm like, wow,
let me
like, let
tell
me
you about my
tell you.
career. Hmm.
It's so I've enjoyed it, and we are during this transition period that we're going through right now, preparing to step away from mobilization and move towards cross-cultural field work overseas. So that's
Wow.
been interesting as well as yeah, we have really enjoyed the official sort of mobilization role, but I feel like it's something that we're never going to really leave behind because really the heart of it is, hey, I'm doing something. God's doing something. Would you come along with me? And I just love giving that invite to people, I guess. So, but we are transitioning
Hmm.
to um hopefully being on the field in the next couple of years.
So
And that'll
cool.
be its own new adventure as well. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. I did want to talk a little bit about like how I ended up here.
Yeah, I
Um,
would love to hear
and
it.
I know we had talked about that some before.
Hmm. Yeah, how did you end up where you are?
Sorry, what?
I
What did you
said,
say?
I said, how did you end up where
Okay.
you are?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, I went to school for studio arts with an emphasis in textiles and ceramics.
So interesting.
And for a long time, well, okay, actually, no, scratch that. I need further back because what is this podcast about? It is about Christians with chronic illness. And so um, I feel like the very first step in my call to missions was actually my diagnosis.
What?
Um, Maybe
No
not the very
way.
first step,
Okay.
but in high school, I had this sort of heart of like escapism of I hated school, even though I was homeschooled. I hated it. I didn't want to participate in the world. I really wanted to just escape and I was going to live in the woods and forage for my food
You
and
sound like my fiance.
um yeah, just I feel like a lot of Christians have this sort of Christian escapism, where it's like, oh, like we're gonna, getting back to our roots and all of that. But really, we kind of decide that we want to hide away from the world, and that's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to, just live in the wild and not participate in the world, in communities at all. And that was just like my dream. I was like, I don't want to go to college. I don't want to have a job. I live in the woods.
Just want to live in the woods.
And yeah, that was very abruptly put to an end.
Mm.
Yeah,
With your
it was very
diagnosis.
abruptly put to an end when I was 17. And I was diagnosed with lupus after going on a road trip with my uncle. I had really bad rashes on my face that we
Wow.
didn't know what they were for a while. And my doctor at first was like, oh, it's a staph infection, and gave me 2 weeks of antibiotics, but that didn't make it go away. And then she was like, that's weird. Let's go see a dermatologist. And the dermatologist tested for lupus and it came back positive. And honestly,
Wow.
I am amazed I got such a quick diagnosis because so many
Yeah.
lupus cases, you wait years not knowing what it is. But I had a very textbook case with the rash on my face, and very sensitive to sunlight.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, that was a very life-changing moment for a 17-year-old to suddenly be told do not go outside, do not be in the sun, wear sunscreen all the time, wear
Wow.
long sleeves, um, wear hats. I didn't like wearing hats before then. And
Dang.
so there was a lot of like, oh, like all of my, oh, I'm gonna just live outside and be natural. And like there was suddenly this realization of like, that's
Wow.
not really possible, is it?
Wow. That's
I'm
so
not going to be able to
sad.
live without medication. I'm not going to be able to, go, outside and without heavy preparation first, at least. And so, yeah, that really was like, okay, like I need to sort of wake up to a reality of, the world that we live in is the world that we live in is not the way it's supposed to be. And that's something that has like hit me hard over the last few years. Like there's so many things that are not the way it's supposed to be. And one of those things is autoimmune illness. Like not the way the world's supposed to be. And so how do we live in this world of not the way it's supposed to be in anticipation of the way it's supposed to be is coming.
Yeah.
Understanding what could have been, but also understanding what is coming.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was, oh my goodness, for a like teenager who loved being outside and wanted to like forage for food for a living, like that was like just so devastating.
Oh.
But because of that, I was like, okay, I'm graduating high school, and my mom convinced me to go to college, even though I wanted to not, to go for art, because all my life people had told me that I was a good artist and that I was so good at making beautiful things. And so I was like, okay, so this must be my calling. I must be called to make beautiful things and just beautify the world.
Oh.
Um, And, I had grown up in a church where I heard stories about, missionaries in the past, some missionaries in the present. And I was always really fascinated by those and thought that was really cool, but also
It
had
is
this
cool. It's
feeling like
so cool.
that's someone else. That happened a long time ago. That is not something I could do, especially not with my illness, especially not with the set of skills God has given me. This idea that like, oh, like I gotta be a teacher or a doctor or, a pilot. Actually, at one point I did consider getting my pilot's license because I was
Wow.
like, oh, I'm gonna be a missionary pilot.
And this was after you had lupus or before?
This
Or
was
after your
after.
diagnosis? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
I was like, oh, I'll be a pilot. And then I realized missionary pilots also have to be mechanics. Because if your plane goes down in the desert, you got to be able to fix it yourself.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
So
so
you weren't
with
interested
all
in
of
the
that,
mechanics lifestyle.
no.
Okay.
I always felt like I was not good with mechanical things or technology things.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so it's like art's the only thing I can do. So I
Oh.
had all of these sorts of like dreams of like, oh, that's cool, but not something I can actually do. That was the
Mm.
same sort of dream as, living in the forest and foraging for my food. Where
Yeah.
it's like, that's
Yeah.
cool, but I can't actually do that. And
Yeah.
so I kind of went to college with that sort of thought, and I enjoyed a lot of my art classes. In 2017, I transferred from MATC in Madison to UW Green Bay, where I met my husband through university, and we just really enjoyed doing like campus ministry together and stuff. But like, yeah, we were in university together, and I remember then in the fall of 2018. I submitted art to a student juried exhibition um, that I was really excited before. I had never before done anything like this, but none of my art got selected for the show. Um,
Oh.
and that was strangely a turning point for me. And I had realized I was coming up on graduation and what on earth am I going to do after graduation? And the future was this big black hole sucking me in. And
Oh.
I turned in my art for this juried show and it got turned away. And I was just like, God, is this not what I'm supposed to do? Am I not good enough to do this? Like, what am I supposed to do? And my husband, who at the time was just a friend, had invited me to um, the Urbana Student Missions Conference, which, if the listeners don't know what that is, it is the largest student missions conference in the world. I highly recommend it.
So cool.
And it is happening this December again.
December of
I only,
2025.
yes.
All right. Where is it at? Do you know?
It's in Phoenix, Arizona. So you
Oh,
can
fun.
go online and search for Urbana. And I mean, Arizona
Tempting.
in December, that sounds pretty nice.
Yeah. Right.
I've been to Arizona mostly in the summer. It's really hot. I bet in December it's really nice.
Yeah. That sounds awesome. Okay, so he took
So
you to
I do highly
Urbana.
recommend it. Sorry, what?
So he took you to Urbana.
Yeah, so we
All
went to
right.
Urbana as friends with a friend group. We had other friends that went along. And I remember telling God, I was like, okay, God, like, I don't know what my life is going to be. Just, can you just lay out the plan? Where I'm going to go to Urbana, I'm going to check it out. I'm going to see, I still had that, missionary pilot, I thought in the back of my head. I was like, okay,
Mm.
God, like maybe there's something out there. And I had this feeling like there's something bigger out there for me. And I was like, okay, let's just go and see what it is. And so I went to Urbana 18, had an amazing time. And had a hard time too, if I'm being entirely honest. I
Yeah.
really struggled with my identity there, like
Really?
because I found that my identity had been really wrapped up in art, and in just other things that I had latched onto. A little bit of my illness in there too, in my art, in um yeah, just who I had decided I was and the limits I put on myself. Um, and so I remember going into the exhibition hall, which was where they had all of the different orgs that were looking to recruit and promote their program and stuff, and just getting this sort of like phobia, stage fright feeling. There's a lot of people, there's so many orgs here. There's maybe a better word for it would be actually this imposter syndrome, actually, where it was like,
Huh.
oh, I'm here, and all of these people at the tables are trying to recruit me and talk to me, but I'm not the person they're looking for. They're looking
Yeah.
for a missionary, and that's not
Oh,
who I am.
right.
And I really struggled with that, and there was like a lot of tears during that
Yeah.
week and a lot of late night talks and just um
Wow.
working through that of like that identity of like, oh, like I'm an artist, I'm not a missionary. And that really was a huge block for me. Um and yeah, so through that though, we got to the last night, and the speaker that night was talking about her own um struggles when she was feeling called and feeling like she was not equipped, not the right person for the job. And I just resonated with that so much. And even without, like, I had asked God to put everything on the table, be like, hey, what's like, can you show me the plan? What's the roadmap?
Yeah.
I did not get that out of the conference. Because
Oh,
that's not how it works.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, I was gonna say like I would have been shocked if he had done that.
But I did leave with my yes on the table, as they say. And not knowing what that really looked like, I was like, I, God, I say yes to being a part of your global purposes. And I wasn't really sure what that looked like at that moment, but I was so excited because suddenly the world was just open again.
Huh.
Like there were the
Yeah.
opportunities were endless again
It's like
instead
you
of
had been limiting yourself for
yeah.
some time, maybe a few years, as like I'm gonna be an artist, but you had developed this heart for missions. And so then this conference somehow opened your eyes that okay, maybe there could be a place for me still.
Yeah, and there was like this sort of relief of like, oh, like it's okay for me to, want this, to want to be a part of this um and take steps towards it instead of it just being a far off like, oh, maybe. Um yeah, and so after that, that's when my husband and I we decided we were going to start dating
Aw, cute.
because we felt like our lives were going in the same direction and
That's
we
so
wanted to
cute.
do we wanted to do missions together, and that literally was like the basis of our relationship. We wanted to do missions together, and we were
Aw.
married then in 2019.
Aw.
um and
Wait, so
yeah, so
what's
that
the
was
time frame? When did you go to Urbana?
yeah, so end of December 2018.
Okay. Okay.
And then I was already crushing pretty hard at
Okay.
that point. And then we started dating 2 weeks later in the middle of January.
Oh.
And then right around Valentine's Day of 2019, we were like, hey, let's get married. And I think it freaked our parents
Wow.
out a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
but then our wedding was in August of 2019 then.
Wow.
So,
Oh my
and
goodness.
we're coming up on our yeah, our 6 year anniversary now.
Aw, that's
Um,
awesome.
so
Congrats.
yeah, I every time I think back to this time in my life, I am just so overwhelmed with gratitude,
Oh.
just for the things that God has given me, and yeah, just yeah, this very like I things I thought I couldn't have, he's given to me. And yeah, that's just been so special. And so I guess from that, like I really developed a heart for mobilization. And we've worked with our org that we're going with, and we've also worked with perspectives, which is another thing to the listeners. I highly recommend perspectives. If you ever get a chance to do a class in your area, um, and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can be a part of God's global plan. Perspectives is a great place to go and just learn about it
Yeah, it's
and hear about
awesome.
opportunities and be inspired. And we've enjoyed, yeah, volunteering with them a lot.
Yeah, that's
So,
awesome.
yeah,
So, okay, so what does it mean that you kind of I think you used the wording something like fell in love with mobilization. What is mobilization? Like I'm sure a lot of our
yeah,
audience is like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So maybe share
yeah,
what that even looks like. What do you do?
yeah. So I guess, that comes down to why are we here? Why
Okay.
why did God establish a church on earth? Because he could just have been like, here, okay, you're saved, you're saved. Now I'm gonna swoop you up to heaven. But we're saved, but we're still here on earth with a purpose. And we are organized into the global church, as in like every believer on the face of the earth is a part of the body of Christ. So the global church is what I mean when that's what I mean when I say the global church. Um and so what is our purpose as an individual, but what also is the purpose of the church being here on earth in this sort of in between time where Jesus has come and changed the world, but also, he also was hasn't come yet too. And so we're in this in between time. And what is the purpose of that? And what is the purpose of the church? And so mobilization is in the same sense of a military mobilization. The church has a purpose to take spiritual ground for the kingdom. And there's places in the world where the church either doesn't exist or has a very, very weak presence. And we can drive around most of our towns here in the US and see several churches that are maybe even just a couple blocks apart, sometimes across the street from each other. Um, versus other parts of the world where you could go through city after city and not find a single church. And so in mobilization, I have these sort of um, joint purposes of like, wow, my experience in being mobilized was so powerful and such a joy to discover that I had a role in all of this. Um, and I want others to experience that too. But also in that I feel the American church is in need of understanding the need in the world, the lack of gospel in certain areas. And it's not that there's not things that need to happen here in the US, but that we have churches, we have bodies of believers here. And there's other places and cultures where there's no body of believers to be that light in their community. And so I really have a heart to also, besides the fulfillment that I feel like the individual believer can get from discovering that, hey, God has called you. And picture picture the classic Uncle Sam poster. I want
We
you.
want you.
Yeah, so that is God pointing at you. I want you to be a part of global purposes. Um, and but in that also, there's this wake up call of like, hey, like there's people that are still waiting. They've never ever heard. They've never heard the gospel before, and there's no church there to tell them. And if we can encourage a church to sprout there, just imagine what would happen. Um, and so I feel like a lot of churches, it's so easy to not really see past the end of your nose, where it's
Yeah.
like, this is what's right in front of me. We got to work on this. And if we can open up their eyes to this global, like the whole church is a global team to reach this goal, the goal that we see in Revelation at the end of time, every nation, tribe, and tongue is worshiping around the throne. And right now, there's some nations and tongues that are not there yet. And but the super cool thing, sorry, I get so excited.
No, that's
We get
great.
to be a part of that. Woo! That is like so cool. Like,
Yeah.
praise you, Jesus. Like, we get to be a part of that. He could do that without our help,
Yeah.
but he's called us to be a part of that. Oh man, sorry. I get so
That's beautiful,
so
Lucy. I
excited
love
about
that.
that.
That's absolutely beautiful.
So I guess that is yeah, that's mobilization. And like so we
So,
tend to be like, oh, there's missions is just people going, but who's gonna call them to go? You know, that's
yeah,
the
yeah.
mobilizer.
So, what does that look like practically? Like, as you are calling people, to be aware that God is calling them to, share His love with the nations. What does that look like for you practically? Like, what do you do on a day to day basis as a missions mobilizer?
Yeah, so there's a few different aspects of that. Some are things like Urbana or perspectives, where so we work with an organization that is trying to recruit people to their specific mission. And we would go and be like, hey, like, do you have a heart for this? Sign up with us and we can help get you
Yeah.
to that faraway place. Um, so sometimes we would go there and have a table and stuff. Um, Sometimes, just like with perspectives, we just coordinated a perspectives class because the learning aspect, I think, is a really big part of
Yeah.
mobilization. Like people don't know, they've not heard about these things. Um, and yeah, just spreading the word of like, hey, like there's someone out there waiting, in a city far away where there's no churches. They're waiting to hear from you,
Yeah.
what God's doing in your life and what God can do in their life. And so, yeah. And then the maybe more like day to day, like we then meet with people and help people with the struggles because like I'm not gonna lie, like this can be hard. There is definitely going to be pushback from the enemy.
Yeah.
We've experienced pushback from the enemy, from churches and from individuals that are just,
Yeah.
I see this as such good news to be a part of God's global purposes like this. And some people don't see that as good news.
Wow.
And that has been made certain relationships rocky. And um, yeah, but yeah, the other side is just that like because we are mobilizing with an organization, we get to be kind of on the inside of that more organization and just be a part of the the movement towards the field.
Yeah.
So there's sort of like what we call a pipeline. And that's not even just within our org, that's kind of in general. A pipeline is just, someone is goes from mobilizing to or mobilization, being mobilized to, oh yes, I am committing to do this with my life. I want to move towards the field, and how do we move people along that and get
Mm.
them to where God's calling them to. So that's just also been a very cool thing, being a part of a community that's, like-minded and working together. And that, um, but yeah, I think the things that I have loved is just, I do love just going to conferences and talking to people.
That's awesome.
Um, and I
That
do
sounds
love
fun.
doing our perspectives courses and coordinating that and inviting the instructors and talking with the students. And
Mm,
yeah,
yeah.
it's a very relational sort of job in the same way that you would, you know, go and evangelize to someone who's not a believer. We just spend a lot of time with Christians, sort of evangelizing them to the missions world and God's global purposes. So it's, yeah, it's a very like very relational, very
Aw.
um yeah, just like hanging out at coffee shops and
Sweet,
being like,
sweet
tell
job.
me about the short-term trip you're going on, you
Right?
know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a very relational job.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm curious. It's cool because you were talking about how like, so you're diagnosed with lupus and then you're like, okay, so I guess I'm going to be an artist now. I guess that's my calling. But then you like started having passion for missions, but you just weren't sure. You thought maybe a pilot, and then you go to Urbana, and then your eyes were kind of opened of like, oh, like maybe God still has a purpose for me in missions. And then now you're in mobilization, and as you shared earlier, you are going to move to the field, and that's so intriguing. Like that you got from being like, all right, I'm an artist to, okay, you're going to be on the field in a few years, God willing. So I'm curious, like, what that process was like for you. Like, how, like, what did you realize that besides the opportunity of, like, a missions coach that was actually doable for you with your health? But, like, what helped you, realize that that was an option? And then also, how are you, like, coming to the potential reality that like you could be like an actual missionary, like because you talked about the fears of
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to live without medication, how are you going to be in the sun,
Mhm.
like, and yeah, so I'm just curious, like how do you perceive that's going to work? How did you get to this point?
Yeah. So that has definitely been its own journey, especially since, let's see, almost 2 years ago now, I had a really bad flare.
Mm-hmm.
And it was shortly after we had started, our mobilization jobs. And I suddenly was just flat on my back for like 2 months.
Oh my goodness.
Um, I had
Wow.
had a bout of COVID that triggered a flare that attacked my kidneys. And because of that, my kidneys stopped filtering um, the protein out of my urine. So I was peeing out all my protein,
Mm.
um, and no protein was left in my blood. And the protein in your blood holds the fluid in your blood veins, um, via osmosis. So I don't know if you're remembering back to like high school science classes, but osmosis, that like the way you can hold um fluid into something even though it's a semi-permeable membrane. So basically my blood vessels were leaking fluid into all of my tissues and organs,
Wow.
including my lungs, which was intense to say the least. I couldn't lay down. I was constantly coughing. I couldn't breathe very well. It took a while for them to do all the tests and everything and be like, oh yeah, this is what it is. I'm like, I feel like I probably could have just told you
Wow.
what it is. Um, but yeah, so with that, and it with lupus, when you have a flare, it takes a long time to build up to it, but also a long time to recover from it.
Mm,
And so I spent a year just being like, okay, God, is this the sign that we're just supposed to stay here and do mobilization? Like, is this
mm,
is this it? Like, because I do know people who have, for health reasons, stayed and their heart is really beating for the nations, but God keeps them here to mobilize.
yeah.
Because mobilization is powerful. Like, guys, seriously, we need people to mobilize almost just as much as we need people to go, because otherwise, how are people going to know they need to go?
Mm.
But yeah, so I had that discussion with God a lot about actually about last summer. And then I remember hearing a story of a man who was working in India and he discovered, I don't know what he had or anything, but that he needed blood transfusions in order to
Um,
survive.
he discovered what?
He need monthly blood transfusions.
He needed monthly blood transfusions to
Yes.
survive. Okay.
Yes. Um, and so his team would drive him to the nearest large city once a month and get his blood transfusion. And he stayed in India. And I remember hearing that story and I was like, man, like, what am I doing then? Like, and that was just kind of God being like, you still have a heart for this. And no matter what happens, maybe there is something that's going to happen still in the future that keeps us here. Um, Keep moving like we're moving towards that other place. Um, and that's kind of been the theme all along is just move as far forward as we can go
Wow.
at a time um and see what happens, see where God leads us then. And so we just keep moving as far forward as we can go. And honestly, I feel like I've recovered from that flare surprisingly well, according to my doctors and stuff.
That's awesome.
So, and we
Praise
talk
God.
a lot with field preparation about things like, okay, where do I go for doctor's appointments on the field? Where do I get medication and things like that? And I think it can be scary when we're stepping into something new.
Yeah.
Um, like, oh my goodness, like I'm used to this hospital and this doctor and this pharmacy, but we forget that, there's other parts of the world that also have doctors and hospitals and pharmacies too. And they may just look a little different, but
Yeah.
they're there. And there's a trusting that God will provide and that God knows what we need. Um, and he also just honors, stepping out in faith, even when we're not sure what's going to happen. And I've really also been just convicted of, I feel like amongst others that I know that have chronic illness, I am fairly high functioning. And I just want to use that for the kingdom. How can I steward my health the same way I would steward anything else in my life, my money, my time, um, my home? How can I steward this in the same way?
Yeah.
You know, because like even though I don't have perfect health, I might have more health than someone else, you know. Not everyone has legs. I have legs, so how can I steward those legs to walk for the kingdom? And not everyone can see, but I can see. So how can I steward my vision for the kingdom? And so just thinking about that and trusting God as
So
I'm
cool.
trying to steward the resources I have.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely been its own journey.
It's such a
And it's
unique
been
perspective.
very difficult. Yeah, and especially during those 2 months where I really was like very just flat on my back and like not really able to do anything and just feeling like, oh God, there's like so many things that I want to be doing for your kingdom right now and I can't. And I'm just like lying in bed and I can't breathe and I'm in the hospital in and out and like I can't like walk. I can't even like stand up for long periods of time because of all the fluid. Like I was so bloated. And so um just also this understanding of like God doesn't actually need my work. The work that I do, the efforts I put in, he doesn't really need those, but they are a gift to me that I get to do these works when I have the chance. And so that was a whole nother sort of spiritual journey of like just realizing that like God's still working even when I can't, even when I am just like flat on my back, as I keep saying. I like God is still at work, even when I am not. And so that's been another just, yeah, a journey because I think we can very easily get into the missions world, mission circles, and it very much becomes about what are you doing? What am I doing? We got to do something.
Yeah.
And we do want to be active, but we also need to stop and remember God is working even when we're not, and sometimes in spite of us. Um, and we get to come along and just kind of help out. I think oftentimes when my son, I have a small son, when he was like 2, um, he wanted to help me carry the groceries inside. And he cannot lift these heavy grocery bags at all. And so I would carry one handle and he would hold the other handle. And now, obviously, I'm holding the weight of the grocery bag on my
Right.
handle, but he's just like holding this other handle, like
Oh.
limply. And I think so much about how that is how we work with God. Like, God is doing the heavy lifting, He's doing it, but we get to do it with Him because that is our privilege as His sons and daughters. And
Oh. That's a
I
sweet
have just
metaphor.
loved that. Oh.
Yeah, it's a really sweet metaphor. Yeah, that's so beautiful. I absolutely, yeah. That's so beautiful. I've never heard like a metaphor quite like that because I think I've often been confused. The whole it's often like a Calvinist question where it's like, well,
Mm,
why like if God has a plan or whatever, why are we involved? And I've always heard the answer
mhm,
being what you said, but hearing that metaphor puts it into place nicely. So I love that.
mhm. Oh, I'm
So,
glad.
how do you think, like, even with mission mobilizing right now, because you said that you are taking, like, every step that you can to get to that point to where maybe you can be a missionary, to the unreached. And so,
Hmm.
right now, that's what you're doing. You're taking those steps. And it's beautiful that, you recovered from that really bad flare up a few years ago. But I'm wondering, in your day to day life, do you find that your lupus affects your mobilizing or your life? Like, is it like a day to,
Hmm.
is it still, like a chronic issue or, yeah, I know. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I do struggle with fatigue. So even though my son is definitely outgrown naps at this point, I have not. So
Oh.
we nap time is a part of our just daily routine because I'm just like I cannot make it through the day without a rest.
So what
So
causes the fatigue, do you know? Like what is lupus and why does it cause fatigue?
actually that's a good question. I'm not entirely sure about that, but
Right, all the
basically,
like
yeah,
biology or anatomy behind it or whatever. Physiology, I don't know,
it
some word.
is. Yeah, it is an autoimmune. So my immune system attacks me sometimes instead of just attacking
Itself.
the things that want to, different diseases, illnesses. Our immune system in general is constantly working. Anytime you get a paper cut, there's so many things that our immune system takes care of that we don't even know we could have gotten sick from.
Wow.
And so that's kind of the thing is like instead of just attacking those things that might be, invading my body, it also sometimes attacks me, like attacking my kidneys a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think I don't know exactly how it works, but I'm guessing it's just my because my immune system is going, fatigue happens. Like it is a common symptom when you like ask about lupus from professionals and stuff. I don't know. Like for a while, I feel like I didn't really have too bad fatigue. But um maybe there's something about being a mom too. That's just like so exhausting.
Right. I'm sure.
But the other thing that definitely affects is yeah, the UV sensitivity and it being a UV triggered illness. So I do still get, the rashes and lesions on exposed parts of like my face and my skin. And so I have learned to wear hats in the summertime, even though I was so against it in high school. Um, and honestly, I don't wear sunscreen every single day like the dermatologist told me, but I am more conscientious about sunscreen.
Yeah.
Um, and also just, not spending a lot of time outside during the height of the day. Um,
Wow.
and
I
yeah,
definitely
like
thought you were
just
going to finish that sentence with summer, not day. Wow.
yeah, well, yeah, in general, like summer is a hard time. And so, okay, so here's another thing, thinking about how we're managing this and looking forward to this vision of being overseas somewhere. Um, so I know I'm not going to be sustainable in the desert
Right. I was
or
going to
in a
say
really
so
hot
many
place.
unreached places
Yeah.
are in deserts. So,
Yeah, or
yeah.
anywhere that's, like a tropical tribal island, where there's just not a lot of
Shade.
resources. And I think we tend to have this view that, oh, that's the places where unreached peoples live. But there's a lot of unreached peoples that are in other parts of the world. They live in cities, they live in cooler parts of the world too. And so that's another thing that I found myself doing a lot in mobilization is kind of being what is your vision of who a missionary is and what sort of people do they work with? It might be different than what you think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. That's really unique. So it's like thinking outside the box, like, okay, there are lost people everywhere. Like there are
Yeah.
unreached people in a lot of different climates, and I
Yeah.
haven't considered that, so that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So even if you look at if I don't know if the listeners are familiar with the 1040 window, but it's this area of the world that kind of goes from North Africa all the way across to Japan and like from like southern Russia and China all the way down to India and like Asian Pacific Islands there. And even in that area of the world, which is known for being the most unreached, you have a wide variety of types of people groups living in both urban and agrarian settings, as well as like hot to cold weather. So like we've got
Wow.
like that Central Asia area where the weather still can get very cold in winter, and it might be very similar weather to, where I live in the northern United States right now, you know. And so the thing is just kind of discovering that the need out there is maybe just as diverse as the people that we have here that are looking for something to do.
Yeah.
And I love
That's
that
cool.
that is a thing. Like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, like God is a God of diversity. Like He made
Oh.
humans diverse, He made creation diverse, and He's given us diverse opportunities and diverse outlooks on life and diverse cultures to enjoy. And he created that all that diversity on purpose because it is just beautiful. So yeah, and I think that that is something that yeah, going and thinking about mobilization again, like what skills do you have? What needs do you have? Like there's probably a place that's perfect for you out there.
Oh.
Um,
Wow. What an encouraging thing to hear. Honestly.
I'm glad.
Yeah. That's so neat because I'm sure there are many. I mean, I feel like having a heart for missions is pretty niche and having a chronic illness is pretty niche. But
Mm,
I mean,
yeah.
um as you know, you've struggled with that, and I know that there are some other people in the organization that you're with that have struggled with that, and you know that's
Mm-hmm.
something that I've struggled with in my life too, just having that
Mm-hmm.
heart. So that's, yeah, that's encouraging. That's really neat to hear.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah.
That's been my hope for this episode is just to, yeah, encourage people in that
Hmm.
um and also just in having a heart for God's global purpose, that's for everyone, whether you're here or there. And
Hmm.
it's such a gift.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, what do you think are some ways that for those with chronic illness that really think, you know, they're not going to be able to go overseas, you know, even if they consider, you know, like the different options of climates, like you talked about, like if they're just so, you know, bogged down even where they are, you know, maybe even for those who are bedridden, what would you say are some ways that they can be part of God's, you know, growing of his kingdom, especially, you know, regarding the nations? What are some ways that they can be involved in that, even, you know, if they're
yeah,
highly episodic?
yeah. So there something that we talk about a lot is the five ways, the five ways to engage with God's world. Um, and that is praying. Sorry,
That's
I
okay.
got my list here now.
I love that.
Praying, sending, welcoming, going, mobilizing.
Okay.
And so oftentimes I tell people this list, it's not a pick your thing and do just that one thing. But that everyone can participate in multiples of these, and
Mm.
each one is so vital. Like praying, oh my goodness, prayer is the foundation before anything can happen. Something really fascinating that I just learned this year is if you've ever heard of the Moravians, they were well, and they still exist, but they sort of early in the Protestant missions movement as a church felt this need that they needed to go to places where the gospel wasn't and share. And we find Moravian missionaries sprinkled throughout a lot of the world, throughout history, doing really cool things. But something that we don't talk about a lot is there, before that happened, there was a prayer movement. They incredibly prayed nonstop for 100 years.
Wow. The Moravians?
They had shifts. They had, let's see, 24 men and 24 women, and they took hour shifts. So they always had one man and one woman praying at every
Wow.
hour of the day for 100 years.
Wow.
And that is honestly the cement that the modern missions movement is built on. And so praying for the world, praying for unreached peoples is such a vital thing. And we always are needing more people to pray. And praying is also a way that God can shape your heart too. So I always tell people when the news is scary, when you see wars, as Jesus said, you will hear of wars and rumors of wars.
Yes.
When you hear those rumors of wars, pray because we tend to feel really helpless, but praying makes us not helpless. So that is always like my first thing is just pray. And in that prayer, sometimes God shows you other things that you can do too. Sending is so vital because how can they go unless they are sent, as Paul says in Romans? Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved, but how can they call on him in whom they have not heard? And how can they hear unless someone preaches? and how can they preach unless someone sends them? And so sending is so vital, and we really need to
Hmm.
be supporting and sending our missionaries well. And there's whole books and classes that you can take to learn how to send and support your missionary really
Wow.
well.
Okay, that's cool. I didn't know
Yes.
that.
So if any of the I don't know a lot about this program because I've not done it and I haven't been a part of a church that has done it.
Okay.
But if any of the listeners are like, I want to learn how to send well, there's a program called Senders University where a church can have that come and they can learn how to send missionaries really
Oh,
well.
that's so neat.
Um, yeah, on top of that, there's like a lot of books and other things that you could read too. Um, but I think maybe the best thing is if you have a missionary that your church supports, you could just ask them, what they need, you know?
Hey, you, what do you need? Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. So, but I think sending is a lot more complex than we tend to give it credit for. It's not just throwing money at someone and being, go do the thing.
Yeah,
They
maybe
need a lot of
reading, maybe
moral
skimming
support
their
over there.
newsletter every now and again.
Yeah. Yeah, like there's a lot more to it. They need that moral support. They need to feel like they've got their team back home that's got their back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so vital for a successful mission because honestly, a lot of missionaries come home after just 2 years. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times
Yep.
it's just because lack of emotional, moral, financial support. And that's an easily preventable thing. So that is vital to seeing this work completed too.
Can I ask you an interesting
Um,
question?
yeah.
Okay, so I know you're not, you know, overseas right now if you end up going overseas. Um, but if you do, and with, your lupus and everything, and if in anticipating that future, and I know you probably don't know until you get there, do you have any idea what you would say if a church asked you, what do you, Lucy, need as a mom with a chronic illness overseas?
Yeah.
Do you have any
Yeah.
idea like how you'd answer that question?
So that's hard to say thinking about that future context. I feel
Right.
like in the present context, even as we've,
Mm-hmm.
been wanting a church that sends us well and,
Mm-hmm.
wanting to have that sort of care as we're preparing. Um, yeah, I think just, yeah, a church that is really um sees us as like one of their ministries, because a lot of churches have a approach to missions where it's like, oh, if someone comes to us and is like, I have a thing I'm going to do, and then we'll give them money.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
but I think a better approach would be, okay, who in our congregation can we care for, holistically care for, and commission and send out? And so, yeah, just having that holistic care of,
Mm,
you know, not just the financial support, but the prayers, the like, how are you doing? Tell me about
mm, mm-hmm.
your what's happening in your ministry. Is there something I can volunteer for? Um, Maybe when you're on the field, then maybe sending short-term trips to
Oh.
that missionary to join in their work, and just
Mm,
this sort of holistic feeling of we're not just an outlier over here doing a thing, but the church is really behind us
mm.
and the people are
These
really
are our
behind us and
friends.
we're
This
on a
is our
team
family.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we're a team, even though we're not locationally in the same
Yeah.
place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've heard other people like, okay, so send the kids gift boxes with stickers or things like that. Letters,
Mm,
just saying, hey, we're thinking about you, praying for
that's
you.
cute.
Yeah, personal visits from church leaders. And so that is a huge commitment for a church to be able to raise up the money to send a church leader to buy their plane ticket, to send them over to visit for a while. But
Oh,
that I think speaks eons,
yeah.
to have a personal visit like that, to just be cared for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so sending, and then
Yeah.
so you said praying,
So
sending.
welcoming would be the next. So that is a unique thing. We tend to think of unreached people groups as only being over there, like I said, in the 1040 window.
Mm.
We have so many unreached people groups that are coming here to the US.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an amazing opportunity. So one of the beautiful things that I've had the privilege of being a part of the past, I don't know, year, I guess, um, is there's a lot of Somali people in the area that I live in. And if you go on Joshua Project, which if the listeners don't know Joshua Project, it's a great website where you can kind of get a glimpse at the people groups of the world where work is happening, where it's not, and learn about the people groups and also pray for them. So you can go on there as a prayer resource too. But Joshua Project has separate pages for a people group depending on where they're at. So the Somali people in Kenya have a different page than the Somali people in Somalia.
Oh wow. Okay.
And yeah, and so the Somali people in the US have their own page and they are marked as a frontier people group, which is basically like the step up from unreached. Meaning there's just no gospel witness amongst them here and
Hmm.
no no movement started, nothing.
Hmm.
Um and I think we tend
Wow.
to walk past unreached people groups in our neighborhood and not notice them because they're just there. But they're still here waiting to hear the gospel, and there's still a cultural barrier that has to be crossed.
Yeah.
When you're going to especially like a Muslim people group like Somali people are, there's very huge cultural barriers sometimes. Like I can't go up to a man and have a gospel conversation because I'm a woman. I need my husband to go up and have the gospel conversation with the man, and I'll have the gospel conversation with the other girl down the street. So there's a huge cultural barrier still, even though they live down the street from a church, they're never going to set foot in that church because of that cultural barrier.
Right. Yeah.
So they still need someone who's willing to step across that barrier and love them in the way Jesus would love them. So that's been a very cool thing as I've been able to be a part of a church that is for the first time asking, how do we love our Somali neighbor as ourselves?
Dude, that's so
Um,
sweet.
so yeah, I'm
Oh,
very excited for them. It's
that's
so
so sweet.
exciting. So that is a very cool thing, like here in the US that's happening and we can be a part of. And it's a privilege to be a part of. Yeah, I'm very excited. And besides Somali people, there's a lot of other immigrant populations.
Yeah.
Even
Plenty.
besides um international students. International students are an amazing opportunity as well. I know a girl from Japan, and Japan is an unreached country. A girl from Japan who came here from college and became a Christian while she was at college. And
Oh,
that's an
wow.
opportunity she wouldn't have had if she had stayed in Japan, most likely. So it's just very exciting, the things that are happening.
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool. I love that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I used to like, definitely because it's so much more like of an exciting idea to like be this
Yes.
missionary overseas in this whole new country. And that's great. Like, if that's what God calls you to do, like he had Paul in the Bible go to a bunch of different places. So, like, and specifically Rome, Paul's like, oh, like place he really wanted to go his whole life, to share Jesus was
Hmm.
Rome. But it's
Yeah.
often like unhealthily like glorified in our minds, and so I think that's a really
Hmm.
beautiful thing that you brought up, that for years, people have been telling me, and I'm starting to have to like actually accept, is that, there are people right here, that you can love,
Yeah.
that you can share Jesus with.
Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
an
And it
awkward
doesn't
and
even have to.
Yeah,
it
go
doesn't
ahead.
even have to be your neighbor that looks and talks like you.
Yeah.
Like we have so much diversity here.
Yeah, exactly. And what a shame
Yeah.
we would pass them by just because you
Yeah.
don't have to cross a border, you know? That's
Yeah.
wow.
I think that's another thing that that kind of has to be torn down in the mind of the American church is that, like I said before, who do you think of when when you say missionary, and who are the people they're working with, you know? And not that I'm saying, oh, everything is missions. A lot of churches you'll go to and they'll say our student outreach is missions, our, kids program is missions. And um, I don't think that that's the case, because if everything is missions, then suddenly nothing is missions. And it can give that church an excuse not to support cross-cultural work overseas.
Okay.
But I think we also need to discover that, like, yeah, we have whole unreached people groups here in our cities that, might be waiting for someone to care and make a concerted effort towards them.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So it's very exciting, and it is a little bit of a debate going on right now, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, I'm curious about that, but probably for another time. Yeah,
Yeah,
intriguing.
if you ever want me to come on again, for sure.
I'll
Yeah.
let you know.
So,
I have enjoyed this for sure.
oh, I'm glad. Me too.
Okay, so you have welcoming, and then there were two more, right?
So the last two are ones that we've kind of already talked about,
Okay.
going and mobilizing.
Okay, got it.
So going, of course, that's, pretty self-explanatory. We talked a little bit about that, and mobilizing, I think is something that honestly God calls a lot of globally minded believers to do that come across chronic illness. I've run into a lot of um, chronic illness mobilizers in my time mobilizing,
Yep.
especially because oftentimes the people that are most passionate are the ones that were ready to go to the ends of the earth and then couldn't.
Yes,
But God
yes.
uses that passion. He uses that passion, and we need that. The church needs to hear that, like, there's something we need to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that last mobilizing, and I think sometimes can be even harder than going. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind
That's
of like I
beautiful.
say, the step beyond
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if not going, which, you know, hopefully, and I think we can certainly limit ourselves as chronically ill people. It's funny because I feel like we either push ourselves and overexert ourselves, or we're like, you know, kind of just diminish our limits because we're like, well, then that'll be, you know, whatever. But, so if not going, there are still plenty of ways to be active
Yeah.
in God's growing kingdom. Like,
Hmm.
sending, you know, healthfully and helpfully sending, you know, missionaries and mobilizing
Hmm.
and praying and welcoming
Yeah.
even your neighbor from another country
Yeah.
or yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Thanks for sharing those opportunities, you know, for us chronically ill brothers and sisters who have a heart for the nations and we're like, what do we do now? That's awesome.
Yeah. It can be hard to get to that point where you're just kind of talking with God, like, okay, well, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, why am I here? What's my purpose?
Yeah.
Um, but it's very, at the same time, kind of just exciting, to just talk with God about, okay, like, because He has the best possible spot for you in His plan. And that is so reassuring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Well, to wrap up your interview, I had two last questions. Well, they're kind of the same, but you know, what is one thing you would say to chronically ill brothers and sisters regarding, you know, finding God's plan for their lives? And what is one thing you would just say to Christians in general trying to find God's plan for their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say,
Or maybe it's the same thing. I don't know. It's up to you.
yeah, I think the general one, just look in scripture. I think the other thing that held me back for so long was maybe a misunderstanding of scripture, especially passages like, the Great Commission, where, Jesus is t giving his church a job to do. But I kind of distanced myself from that and felt like, oh, if I'm gonna, go overseas, I need to have this um sort of road to Damascus
Mm-hmm. Experience. Yeah.
experience, the call, the warm
The
fuzzy
signs.
feeling.
The
Yeah, a sign, the writing on the wall,
confirmations.
all of that. And I um came across this, just actually another book I highly recommend, and there's now been, I think, a movie made too. So you may have seen the movie, The Insanity of God. Um Such a good read. Highly recommend it, The Insanity of God. Um, and the author talks about his call to missions and when he and his wife were signing on with a sending agency, and they asked about their call, and he was like, well, I read Matthew 28. And they were like, what? And he's
Mm.
like, well, but it says there that we should go to, and preach the gospel
Mm.
to all nations.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, no, you're supposed to have, and I realized that's all that it takes. Like, I don't have to have the
Wow.
vision or the warm fuzzies. Um, but just
Yeah.
that Great Commission is for the whole church, and that includes me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and that includes you. And we don't have to sit and question our calling, because that is for the whole church. And then after that, then, I didn't have a heart for this people group or that people group, but I can ask God to give me that heart. And he will. He is faithful, and he will give you the heart for whatever people you're trying to reach, whatever people you're praying for, whoever, maybe you have Somali neighbors, maybe you have Afghan neighbors. Um, you know, he will give you the heart for that. And we tend to not ask for those sorts of things, We don't ask God. We ask God for our material needs, but we don't ask him for our spiritual needs. We don't ask him for, you know, his heart for the nations, his heart for a person or a people. We don't ask him for fruits of the spirit. Like, that's the thing. Like, just ask. And we tend to not do that. So, um, that's something that I tell people a lot, is just ask. If you feel like you don't have a
Oh.
calling, just ask God, pick something even, and just ask and just be like, God, would you send me to XYZ?
Mm-hmm.
You know, give me a heart for Buddhist people. Give me a heart for, yeah, just ask. And I guarantee you, he will be faithful in that, because
Oh.
he wants you to care for these people,
Yeah.
because he cares for them and loves them. Um, so I think that's my general one. And
Yeah.
then I think for yeah, for people that are struggling with chronic illness, some things that have really encouraged me is just um reading Paul's writings. And Paul talks a lot about the really hard things that happen in life, because you guys know this, but sometimes life sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it sucks, if I'm being entirely honest. Um, but Paul talks about how in our weaknesses, God is stronger.
Yep.
And over in the Bible, we see that God uses the weak things of the world to shame the strong. And um, so just brother or sister who's listening, know that the weakness you have in whatever illness you have, that is something that God is going to use to glorify himself. He will use you in ways that he can't use someone who's perfectly healthy, because God's power is manifested more through
Mm-hmm.
human weaknesses, which is just so cool.
Yeah.
Um, and I wanted to just leave everyone with this Bible verse. Let's see, 2 Corinthians 4:16. Therefore, we do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. Actually, I'll go on to verse 17. For our light and momentary troubles. Now, he's just described how he thought he was going to die, like a chapter before. He just described how he thought he was going to die. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So I've taken a lot of comfort in that, and I hope that you can too.
Yeah. That literally made me just think like, wow, like that's beautiful. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being on this interview, Lucy. It's been really, really neat
Hmm.
hearing like your encouragement for, people like me who have a heart for God's plan for the world, but also feel, the limits and weight of chronic illness. And so it's really like
Yeah.
so special to hear like you who have already walked that path and process that, and it's also super encouraging to hear that you might go overseas. So I'm super
Yes.
excited for you and for your family, and can't wait to see what God does with you.
Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
so glad I got the chance to come on here with you.
Yes, absolutely. It's been so fun. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thanks so much. I hope that God gives you, all the returns and blessings for taking your time and your energy to be on this podcast. And I hope you get a good nap.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for being a part of the Christians with Chronic Illnesses community and for tuning into our podcast. Please follow, rate, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Patreon. You can also follow our socials at CWCI Podcast. If you're interested in sharing your God-given story, we'd love for you to email us at cwcipodcast@gmail.com. This podcast cannot substitute for medical help and is purely for encouragement and entertainment. Please see your doctor before trying anything mentioned on this show.